Now let's get to kind of the meat of the matter here. What are they actually arguing about? They're arguing about this big, beautiful bill, as Trump calls it. And Elon is very upset about the fact that the bill includes way too much pork, way too much unnecessary spending, continues things like Biden's Green New Deal for another 4 or 5 years, whatever the case may be. And Elon's very concerned about the national debt. And he's very concerned about the nation going into debt slavery, even economic collapse. And these are all legitimate concerns. Here's I apologize, a famous guy whose name I can't remember on the Joe Rogan show, but he's making some of these points. The federal government today pays more in interest on the debt than we do in the budget for the Department of Defense. We pay $1.2 billion a year in just interest on the debt. Total government spending is about $7 trillion. Interest payments are $1.2 trillion. Department of Defense is $800 billion, half of that. Well, 2/3 of that. Total debt is $35 trillion, and it adds another $1 trillion at that every 100 days. Now, I will tell you, folks, that in my view, the debt's a real problem. There's no question about it, and something needs to be done. But there's a couple ancillary questions that need to be addressed. One is it the most existential threat to our nation in this moment, such that it should be prioritized over everything else? The second question I would ask you is, which political party really drives this debt crisis?
Did you know that in all 50 states, self-defense law, not gun law, but self-defense law, uses a simple 5-element test to see if your use of defensive force was legally justified? And that same test applies no matter what state you're in or what tool you use to defend yourself. If you're missing even one of those required elements, however, you've made yourself an easy conviction for an aggressive prosecutor. My name is Attorney Andrew Branca, and I've worked more than 30 years as a self-defense attorney. Every state has seemingly endless, complex pages of laws regarding self-defense, so complex that many top criminal defense attorneys rely on my expert analysis to help win self-defense cases for their clients. If the legal code is that complex for lawyers, how can a citizen gun owner expect to know or even follow the law, especially when a life or death situation has triggered a massive adrenaline-fueled mandate to make that fight or flight decision right now? It seems daunting. Yet I created a simple but powerful framework that has allowed me to serve the legal community and countless American gun owners to simplify this legal complexity into just 5 elements of self-defense law. And you can learn my 5-element legal algorithm I use to consult on and win with the top criminal defense attorneys all over the country to protect law-abiding gun-owning citizens from making innocent legal missteps that land them in prison. Now, with a simple read or listen, you can install my 5-point legal framework so it acts as a sort of muscle memory defense to protect you from losing your rights when you choose to defend innocent human life. Click below to get the latest edition of my book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles, for free. I ask only that you help cover the shipping and handling cost to get the book to you.
Now, don't get me wrong. The GOP likes to spend money too. It's in the nature of politicians to do this. It's very easy for them to solve their own political problems, their own political challenges, getting reelected by spending other people's money. So it's not like the GOP doesn't vote for money. But there's voting for money that's unpleasant, and there's voting for money that's an existential threat to our economy and our nation, at least in the longer term. Just look at, in a micro sense, egg prices. Remember the egg price crisis? The end of last year, they decided to kill all the chickens. The price of eggs went through the roof. It was a huge national crisis. Trump gets on board. What happens to egg prices? And who raised these prices? Who decided to kill all these chickens? Millions of chickens. It was the Democrats. It was the Biden administration that created this crisis that then Trump had to solve. Here's an image I took in 2020 when Trump was first elected for his first term. That's gasoline. I was filling up my car. $1.14.9 folks. When was the last time you saw gas at that price? Who was president? Donald Trump was president. Look at inflation over time. This is since about 2015. We can see the period of time in which Trump was president here, 2016 to 2020. Then what happened? A Democrat was elected, stole the White House, President Joe Biden. And you have to understand when we're looking at this, that all of this is cumulative. Every year's inflation is stacking on top of the other year, and it doesn't go away. It's cumulative. So this entire area from 20 to 24, Joe Biden, and by the way, look what happens at the end here. When they're running for re-election, the Democrats begin to change things so they can get re-elected. But what happens when they're actually in office? When they're secure in office, you get this Mount Everest of inflation. Look at these percentages here. This is moment by moment, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10% inflation. And again, it's cumulative. This whole area under the curve is now a burden every American has to carry on their shoulders forever, unless we were somehow to go into a deflationary period. Good luck with that, because we had a little taste of it here at the far left. A little bit of it came darn close just before Biden was elected, just before he was sworn in and his policies took effect. This is all cumulative. This is what happens when the Democrats have power, folks. What was the cumulative inflation under Joe Biden? Well, I asked Grok. Not that I think Grok is a holder of all truth, but it's useful for this kind of statistical aggregation as long as we're not making political judgments. It's just numbers. The cumulative inflation under the Biden administration was 21.2%. Do you understand what that means? That means forever moving forward, every American is carrying on their shoulders a 20% inflationary burden on everything. The prices don't go down. The inflation rate may decline, as it has, but that 20% cumulative burden that Joe Biden created for us, that's forever. That's what happens when the Democrats have a voice in how things are done. By the way, we started with World War II in today's show because today is D-Day. What do you think the cumulative inflation was for World War II? You know, a world war for 4 years, 22 to 24%, right in the same range of what Biden inflicted on us when we were not at war. The only war was the war of the Democrats upon America. I mean, this should shock everyone. What about debt? Well, the truth is we should, in my view, consider debt really in the context of GDP. How much debt you have to how much income you're making, essentially. Because a wealthy person can afford a much greater absolute level of debt than a poor person, right? That makes sense. A rich person can afford $1 million mortgage. A poor person cannot. And I think that's true of the nation as well. We have to compare our national debt to our GDP, which provides a hint, by the way, in how debt can be managed. It's more than one way. It's more than cutting the debt. GDP growth is also critical in managing the debt burden. But let's take a look at a graph of debt to GDP. And I'll agree with everybody, it's too high. It's too high. No question about that. Here's a graph on the left. We're starting at about 2015, and national debt to GDP was about 1 to 1, 100%. And now it's about 1 to 2, a 20% jump. That's a big deal. No question about it. But how did we get there? Did we get there gradually over time? Did we get there because we were compelled to spend money because of a world crisis, a World War III? No, we got here because in 2020, Joe Biden was elected and passed the new Green Deal. The entirety of this growth in our national debt relative to GDP is the Democrats spending money like the drunken sailors they are to enrich themselves. All of it. Again, This is what happens when the Democrats are given an authoritative voice in how our government economy, our national economy is run. And of course, it's not just on the national scale. Just look at any of the hard blue states. Look at New York. Look at Illinois. Look at Wisconsin. Look at California, the largest state in the country, a national level economy all by itself. Look what the Democrats have done to the economy of California. Now, California is full of billionaires, right? Tech billionaires, a lot of wealth in California, and a lot of poverty. A lot of poverty. What is the poverty rate of California, according to Grok? Well, the most recent year we have numbers for 2023, 19%. Folks, that's higher than Alabama. That's higher than Mississippi. The highest poverty rate of any state in the country is California. Does that mean California as a whole is poor? It's not poor. It's become a feudal society. It's got a bunch of billionaires at the top and then 40 million poor people working in a state getting taxed to serve the interest of those government bureaucrats stealing all that money. What's the threat to America? Fundamentally, it's the Democrats. There's an oath taken to the Constitution to protect the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. We certainly have foreign enemies. We have domestic enemies too. And they are the Democrats. They are the poison in our body politic. All bad things flow from the progressive, woke, DEI, fascist Democrats in our society. Here's a post from none other than Rod Blagojevich. Admittedly, he was pardoned by President Trump. But he writes, warning to Elon Musk, don't let the Democrats in the game. If the big, beautiful bill goes down, the Republicans, with their narrow majority in the House, will be forced to deal with the Democrats. Then the pork spending will rocket into space, and Trump's bill will be far bigger and less beautiful. In a democracy, you can never let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And I believe this 100%. I believe a lot of people are reacting to what's happening with this big, beautiful bill in an emotional way. It's not giving them what they'd like to have. It's a very kindergarten kind of perspective. They're not properly prioritizing the threats to America, and they're letting the perfect be the enemy to the good. And I'll expand on that in a moment. But just to drive all this home again, what do I think is the greater threat to America than our current national debt, or even the national debt threatened by the big, beautiful bill? The pork spending in the big, beautiful bill, everything that Elon's objecting to is a legitimate objection. I also find it offensive. It's not the way I would run things if I were in power. But I'm not in power. Trump's not in power. Congress is barely in power. It's 400 some people, all arguing and debating, all with their own political drivers and incentives, with their own constituents to answer to. It's making the pork, folks, and making the pork is never clean. The debt's bad. The way these budgets are done is bad. The way our government is structured in such a way that it makes it almost impossible to do clean bills. You need such a super majority in Congress. You need at least 60 votes to do a clean bill that's not encumbered with tons of pork. And neither side has that. Thank God the Democrats don't have it, but the Republicans don't have it too. But as bad as I think the debt is, and the way we draft these multi-thousand-page bills that clearly no one can read before they are passed into law, as bad as all that is, it pales in comparison to this. It pales in comparison to the third world invasion of our nation. This, folks, is the premier existential threat to America. We can have debt and we can dig our way out. That's an economic possibility. But we are a nation of 340 million people in a world of 8 billion people. If the Democrats continue to import tens of millions of illegal migrants into our nation every year, and just look at that curve under Biden. Again, this whole area under the curve. Isn't it weird how it looks like the inflation graph? Isn't that weird? Because this is inflationary, folks. This is inflationary. When you bring 100 million illegal migrants into the nation, not only does it cause political chaos and present a political existential threat to America, it inflates everything because now you have 100 million additional people consuming scarce American resources like human locusts. They all need housing and health care and education and food. They get cash handouts. Where do you think a lot of that Green New Deal money went? To pay for this invasion. This is the Democrats. They just opened the borders. And if they're in control again, they'll open the borders again because they recognize that Americans are only 20% of Americans are aligning with the Democrat priorities, like trans men and girls sports, all this other DEI nonsense they do, anti-white racism, all those very important Democrat initiatives. 80% of Americans don't want anything to do with any of that. So they can't stay in political power and pursue their agenda if the constituency is actual American citizens. They must replace us. They must replace us. And we know that if Kamala had won, the Democrats had their plans to fast track all of these people into instant American citizens. Do you want 100 million Haitians, Venezuelans, Somalians to be your peers in voting for what America looks like? Does that just make America not a third world nation itself? We don't have magic dirt here. You don't land in America and become an American philosophically, historically, ethnically, culturally. You come here as one of tens of thousands of Somalians, get all dumped in one city so you can vote for a congresswoman. They're still Somalian. They don't magically become Americans. This is the existential threat to America. We could reduce our national debt to zero. And if we don't stop this, we're not a nation anymore. We are the third world. And guess what will happen then? You think all these tens of millions of Haitians and Venezuelans and Cubans and Somalians, all these African imports, you think they're not going to vote to raid your 401k, to put a value tax on your home, a wealth tax on everything you own? Why wouldn't they? Wouldn't that be in their self-interest to raid the wealth of America for their own purposes? Why wouldn't they vote for that? And even if they're not voting, their mere personal presence in America gets counted in the census for apportionment of House seats. The Democrats have 30 to 40 House seats they would not have but for these illegal migrants, of which I am convinced there's 100 million in the country. Folks, the debt is bad, but we can fight a debt war and win and still be America. If we import another 100 million illegal migrants, what do you think America is then? Who's going to protect your assets, everything you've earned? You're worried about a debt slavery? You'll be a third world illegal migrant slave of the third world illegal migrants. You know you're taxed to pay for them now. You want to pay for 2 times this number, 3 times this number? Nothing matters more than stopping this. This is the premier existential threat against America. And the big, beautiful bill helps to stop this. At a cost, admittedly, a cost I don't like, a cost of a lot of pork. But war costs money. War is waste. And America is in an existential war against this. And who's driving this? Who's driving this? The Americans.
Thanks for watching this highlight segment of our full-length Law of Self-Defense live stream. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to give us a like and subscribe for more expert analysis on politics, law, and how to be hard to convict. And to watch the full-length episode of this show, just click right here. Stay safe.